a webinar to help you understand and hopefully give you some good tips on volunteer recruitment. And again, my name is Mary Cruz. I'm trying to advance the slide. There we go. Because this is such a small group and you're all in one location, this will be a lot more informal. You can just cut me off when you're ready, or if you have a question, just please jump in. You don't have to raise your hand or type a text question, but if we had multiple locations, we could do that. And again, my name is Mary Cruz. I'm with SMPS National, Director of Chapter Services. I've been with SMPS going on 10 years. And I really enjoy working with the chapters and learning from you and sharing resources with the chapters and hopefully developing new ones that are helpful to you in your jobs. So we're going to get started with just understanding recruiting volunteers and membership growth and retention. And I'm sure that it's a pretty obvious statement to say that these two things tie very closely together, that understanding membership growth and your retention, retaining members and growing your membership directly ties into your volunteer base, obviously, and ties into your pool of volunteers, the level of expertise of your volunteers, and the talent network that you have available. So, you know, wanting to continue work on membership growth and retention will inevitably, hopefully, help you with your recruitment of volunteers, especially new members. We know just by doing some statistics and learning from the chapters that new volunteers are typically within the 2 to 5 year time frame are willing to volunteer at a certain level if the volunteer position and the role and what's expected is clear to them and a time frame is clear. And being able to engage them early on will inevitably, hopefully, increase your retention percentage and hopefully bring on new members. So just always focusing, I know that you have, you know, a membership chair. And Amy, I'm not sure, do you have, aside from, I'm looking at your level of volunteers, and I see that you have 12 that we have 12 accounted for in our database. Do you have additional committees as well?
No, really, we just have a really core group at the board level and a couple other key volunteers, which are probably on your list.
Okay. So for me, it just helps understand, looking at your base, your membership base is 56 right now, and so what I have is 12 in the database. Some chapters will send us their executive committee and 1 or 2 other volunteers, but then they may have 5 or 6, you know, on a membership committee or 5 or 6 on a programs committee. So it's good to understand the numbers that we're working with. So looking at that again, 12 volunteers out of 56 possible or potential. Again, you guys know your membership well and you know the demographics of your membership, and looking at some of that, knowing maybe the principals and those senior levels may not be as involved obviously on the volunteer level, but really looking at and refining and understanding the demographics of your membership and who they are, and are they, you know, 50% more coordinator, entry-level, manager level? Are those the people that are more willing to volunteer? The newer members, you know, greeting them and trying to have those one-on-one conversations with them early on. And we'll get into more of that now, but in the following slides. But just want to always have in the forefront of your mind, remembering that every member of the board and every volunteer should always be thinking about recruiting new members, and obviously really analyzing the membership you do have, and understanding who those individuals are and their talents that may be there for you. So what we're going to kind of do is walk through this and what doesn't work and what does work. A lot of chapters do a general announcement asking for volunteers, and we've learned that that does not work. When you are before breakfast or a program that you might have, and you know, someone may welcome the speaker, but beforehand have some housekeeping items, and one of those is maybe the membership chair gets up and just talks really quickly about becoming a volunteer, and it's a blanketed statement out to the group. And I'm not saying that that isn't that doesn't work all the time. I mean, it's nice to have multiple ways of approaching this, and that is one of them, but that can't be solely the way that it's done. And you know, even if you have sign-up boards in the back, if you have a specific need and you're able to you know, make that known before a meeting or group is good. But again, it's not really what works. The direct ask is is really what the board members and the membership chair and the volunteer itself or that potential volunteer feels most comfortable with. Make it personal, one-on-one conversations, getting to know your members. Again, really looking at your member list, and maybe the board members sit down at one of your meetings and decide, you know, in your mind, you don't have to necessarily say this is the buddy system, although that works, but each board member takes one or two of those members on your list and says, I'm going to get to know this person. I don't really know who they are, but at the next meeting, or maybe I'll make a phone call, or maybe I'll ask them to come out to coffee and really get to know who that member is just before you. Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to be on the membership committee? It's a very broad statement, and most times that will scare people off, not knowing the commitment fully. I volunteer as well. I'm on the membership committee for ASAE and the Component Relations Committee. So, you know, when I decide to volunteer, it's definitely based on knowing exactly how many hours hopefully that's going to entail, and know specifically what my goals are, what you want me to, whether it's just maybe recruiting one speaker, or maybe it's just working on one membership campaign. Breaking down those pieces and making it clear to the volunteer will 9 times out of 10 hopefully return a yes to you, that I will volunteer, I will do it for this specific task. And hopefully once they do that specific task, they get to know your board members, they get to know you better, they feel a part of the group. And it really does matter, feeling a part of the group, feeling that they're not just being asked to take on a job, they're kind of left out there, get it done, and then, you know, they fall off the grid because they didn't feel a part of the group. So those general announcements, again, can be a part of your campaign, but the direct ask and really spending time with those individuals and getting to know them is very important. Again, what doesn't work, going it alone. You know, sometimes it's the lonely membership chair who's responsible for getting out there and, you know, recruiting members and retaining and coming up with those ideas. But again, all the board members as a whole should really be thinking all the time about membership and having conversations with those prospects that are coming to your groups that you guys are splitting up, and at a breakfast or membership meeting or, you know, networking event, that you're really breaking up and going out and shaking hands and meeting those prospects and non-members and getting to know who they are. And the team approach, you know, I think sitting down at one of your next board meetings and really breaking down that membership list, and like I said, having each board member kind of tackle or get to know, isolate, you know, 3 or 4 members, 2 or 3 members, whichever is reasonable for your group, and reaching out to those persons, even if it's just making a phone call and just saying, I know you're a member, I'm the, you know, programs chair, I'm the treasurer, and I'd really just like to get to know who you are. Do you have any questions about membership? Is there something we're not doing? Again, I know we send out surveys and things like that, but that personal reach out, and I think just, you know, a couple of phone calls a month is reasonable and something that board members can try to achieve. Again, you know, recruiting long-term versus short-term. We have found that when, you know, a lot of times in your bylaws it may say, you know, if you're serving on the as membership chair or treasurer or whatever that is, it's a 2-year term, and that may be true, and that certainly is part of your bylaws. You want to follow that. But with the other positions, if it's not noted in your bylaws, short-term commitments tend to be much more reasonable and appealing to individuals. Even if it turns into long-term, that's wonderful. But again, letting them know that this is a short, you know, we need some help with membership. Could you help us with this membership campaign, and reaching out to these couple of members. And we just need maybe, you know, 5 to 6 months, or, you know, 2 months of your time, 30 days of your time. This is what it really would entail, but you need to know exactly what your needs are and breaking those down and then documenting them, so that when board members are having conversations with individuals, that you know exactly what you're talking about and you guys are all on the same page. Knowing, you know, I know Tina was there not too long ago, and you guys work, you know, have done, I'm sure you're planning for the year, and maybe you're coming up on doing another strategic planning session soon. So having that be a part of it, really determining what those specific holes are in your volunteer base and how you'd like to fill those, and not just doing it for the numbers, not just to increase numbers, but really being specific and analyzing and, you know, getting that whiteboard out and writing down, this is really where we need to focus this year. Could we get 2 or 3 more people for this specific goals that we want to reach, and how do we do that? And so that when you're having the conversations with individuals, it's not, will you just volunteer? Can you, you know, we really need some more volunteers. Again, when it's so broad and so unknown, the likelihood that someone's going to step up is not likely, although it happens. again, what doesn't work? Assume no means never. There's been many times where volunteers have, at a certain given period of time, you may have approached them and they're like, no, 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 I'm not interested. And so you don't go back to that person. Again, you don't want to hound them, but maybe 5 or 6 months later you have another conversation, just gently, having a coffee with that person, getting to find out what their circumstances are. It could have just been at that point in time that they were unavailable, or that maybe their circumstances have changed. So don't just rule those people out when you're going through your list. No, they told me no, we can't go back to them. Just remembering, being understanding of what they're going through, and maybe finding a way to fit them in. And even if it's them writing a news article or writing some content for your website, maybe that's their specific talent that can help. And consider another question: what are you interested in? When you're having conversations with volunteer or potential volunteers, what is your interest? What is your talent? Do you like photography? Do you, on the side? Do you like writing? Maybe writing for a blog. Maybe you like going to visit. You might want to visit some of the firm's principals, just to have a conversation maybe with them, or making a phone call, writing a letter. Whatever that is, finding out what the specific talent is of your membership base, and then pairing them up with a specific task or need. And just, again, Amy and everyone there, jump in if you have questions. This is, informal. I can just continue on. Are there any questions at this time?
No, I think these are all great points. Thank you.
Okay. So what doesn't work, again, butt in the chair? I know a lot of the chapters feel that they have to fill a certain position. They have to have this position filled. Again, your bylaws do dictate typically how your board is structured. However, there are unique situations where, the incoming president, Amy, who, if you need to have a conversation with us, we're here for you anytime. Mary, my name is Mary and Tina, to discuss with you what's going on, and maybe that we don't fill a position in a given year. I mean, your executive committee is one thing, but depending on what your needs are, some chapters have had to restructure, go back and say, maybe we don't need to do the golf tournament. Maybe we don't need to do the specific thing that takes up so much volunteer time. Maybe we cut back a little bit this year on programs. It definitely has to be really thought out and decided that is the best course of action. But if just putting a person into a position that they're not happy with, or that they may not know how to approach, or maybe it's not best fit knowing their talents and skills, can be one of the worst things you can do, because that negativity that can permeate through the rest of the volunteers and be seen by the membership, and then again turn people off. It becomes this trickle effect. So sometimes an empty seat is the best. And if it's, again, something that is part of your bylaws, we can always work with you on that, and taking some time to fill that position. And we can always help too, looking at your membership and making a phone call or two to have a conversation with that potential volunteer. We're happy to help with that as well. If you have someone on the fence and they just need to know that they have a support system, we have a lot of resources nationally, some that many of you may not be aware of. We store in the libraries. We have available, things that we can do to reach out to potential firms, writing letters to principals, things that we're happy to help with, recruitment campaigns. We try to make that known in many different ways, but again, the volunteers are always changing, and we're always having to reiterate those resources. Again, sure, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say that kind of to your point of not always having to have someone sit in a certain role. I think that's one thing that over probably the past maybe 2 years, we've really cut back on the number of positions that we've had in terms of leadership of certain committees, just because we didn't have anyone to lead the charge. And I think obviously that's killing the group of people that are volunteering currently. And I know Heather and I just had a conversation of how do we build that base back up and grow that list of kind of steady volunteers who are willing to kind of take on that level of commitment.
Yes, and that is true. And like you said, having those vacant spots absolutely puts a lot more work on the others. And Again, it's looking at what you're offering, how many programs, what special events, what things are you doing that possibly may need to be put on hold for a little while. And we don't want to obviously take away from the members because, you know, they're a member, they pay a membership dues, and we want to make sure we're giving them value and that they're aware of the full value of membership, not just at the local level, but at the national level as well. But I think when we get to a little bit further down into the slides here, you're going to see some just specific tasks and tips that you guys really need to sit down and decide what's going to work best, what can your chapter handle for recruiting these volunteers. And again, you know, out of the 56 members, 12 are volunteers. So getting possibly 10 more could do, I mean, could that do wonders for your chapter? Do you think that would be, or maybe just 5 more would be helpful? Maybe one specific aspect, maybe it's programs that's weighing on everybody. Maybe it's coming up with a programs committee, specifically adding 5 people to a committee there to really help with the different sessions. But I think if you can sit down with your board and really look at these options. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you guys have tried all of these tips that we're going to go through. Have you tried taking, you know, splitting up the list and just reaching out and personally getting to know a couple of the members and finding out what their talents are, doing a volunteer skill set survey to your members and interest. All of these little things that we're going to go through, you don't have to do them all, but targeting 3 or 4 things from the board and making this a campaign, making this, you know, even fun for your board. Maybe there's a fun prize at the end, you know, for someone who can recruit 1 or 2 volunteers. Making it fun and them knowing that they're coming into a fun group, that this is someone that is not just all about fun, but, you know, that this can help their firm and getting to know you, being in front of people, learning leadership skills, learning how to manage people. All of these types of things, you know, selling it in that way too can bring back, you know, again, hopefully they'll understand the value in volunteering, not just to fill a seat, but that they understand this can bring value to their firm. It can bring value to their job. So I think it's really understanding, having some messaging when you go to speak to volunteers, that you guys are all on the same page in how you're selling it and what your needs are, and really identifying those needs. Maybe you just have one board meeting dedicated to looking at those holes and what it's specifically, coming up with job descriptions and piecing it out so that when you're having conversation and who's going to pair up with what member. So you have to have a, I mean, I call it a campaign, but have some type of structure around it and not just, you know, going out and hoping that, you know, volunteers will appear. And I know that I'm sure that you guys have worked very hard at this. Have you done a specific type of campaign like that?
No, I mean, we really haven't. I mean, certainly we do the blanket asking, and I think we're doing a better job. Heather Switzer and I, as president-elect and president, have been trying to really reach our newer members to get them, you know, 1, engaged, and 2, you know, kind of gauge their interest. And, you know, we have some folks who have kind of expressed an interest, and we've given them some tasks to do. But then, you know, like everyone else, you know, the other issue that we deal with is the accountability also. So, but it
is, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of like an actual campaign, I mean, I can't say that we've done anything that's been that organized.
Yeah, and again, it doesn't have to be so based on, you know the needs of your volunteers and how much time they can give right now, the volunteers that are in, you know, in the room, and those that, you know, of these 12 volunteers, and not wanting to add more and more to it. But it can be as simple as, you know, when everyone is at the next networking event or breakfast, that every volunteer, not just you and Amy, but that you guys are, you know, the entire board is responsible for going and having just having a conversation with a member and say, hey, when they come back to the next board meeting, or maybe send an email, maybe you just ask them to report back to you, but send an email and say, I spoke to Ted, and Ted is with this company, and he's been a member for 3 years, and I found out, you know, some things about him. And, you know, it's just about, you know, pushing your board members and your volunteers that you have currently to really get to know the members and having those it may not be that they come back immediately and say, okay, I got somebody to sign up for the programs committee. just to know that you're holding, they're having conversations. After they've had that networking event, I want everybody to come back to me and tell me, someone you had a conversation with, and maybe you mentioned volunteer work, what was their level of interest? Were they an absolute 0? Were they a 5? Were they a, maybe I'm on the fence? And then you start to kind of chart and track those conversations, and then who becomes more appealing. So it's everybody really playing a role, and it doesn't have to be so timely. It's just literally making sure you're not grouping, you guys are sitting together. I know it happens a lot. It even happens with the national board, and staff. We'll go to an event or we'll be at a conference and we're all huddled together, and we have to split up, and we have to just try to get out there and separate and attack, if you will. But we'll get into that a little bit more. But being people-driven doesn't work. Being position-driven, again, it's sitting down at your board, at your meetings, and understanding what are the positions you want to fill. You want to gain volunteers, but just pulling in a volunteer to fill a space, we really need to know what that position is and what it entails, so that not just you, Heather, or Amy speak to it, but someone else, Jason, is able to speak to it, or Amy or Aaron, or someone else that understands the position and is able to say, oh, we have this opening and this is kind of what it entails, but maybe you can take a piece of that. And, having them take that piece can be helpful and take some work off of you, but it doesn't mean that they have to commit to the big, broad thing. Hopefully, once they've gotten into it and they've taken that piece and they've gotten to know the board and they see the value in it and they feel more comfortable and compelled to come back, the next year they'll take on the director position. So it's kind of that succession planning. What doesn't work is assuming the volunteer knows what work needs to be done. And what does work is making sure the details and the clear expectations. Again, when you have those conversations, you say, here's the program's chair's responsibilities. Do you guys have, I'm just curious, do you have job descriptions for each of your board positions?
I believe we started out when we first became a chapter with what was provided from national.
Yeah.
And I think
was
over
very,
the years,
very broad what came from us. But
yeah, over the years we've made a few attempts to update them, and it just has always fallen to the back burner. So right now we don't have anything in place.
So that might be the first course of action, and just to make you feel a little bit better, since since you've been chartered many years since then, we have acquired lots of chapters job descriptions. So we have from small to mid to large, and again, don't just dismiss, oh, that's New York or that's Atlanta. They're a huge chapter. They've got a lot more resources, that kind of thing, because you can look at their job descriptions and just cross out what you don't need, things that won't work for your chapter, but keep those that do. So you're not recreating the wheel, and you're not spending months trying to create these job descriptions. They're already there. So what I'll do, and they're in the library, everyone could grab a pen and write down, as a chapter leader, if you haven't been to my SMPS, the chapter leaders library, please do so at some point today or in the next couple of days. Just check it out. Don't go in there. You don't have to, go through everything. But certainly go to mysmps.org, log in. If you have any problems logging in, shoot me an email, and I'll help you through the process. It's the same login information that you'd use for the national website. And then go into, as a volunteer, everyone from treasurer to secretary to anyone, membership chair, has access to the chapter leaders community. That's a specific community of my SMPS. And when you get into that, all you have to do is go to My Communities. Once you've logged in, you'll see My SMPS, My page. You go to My Communities, and you'll see chapter leaders, because we automatically, again, put you in there. And then there's about 700 to 800 volunteers in that community. You go into the library, and then there's folders and folders and folders of samples of things for you. And one of those folders that Amy, you guys may want to look at are the job descriptions. They're already in there. There's probably at least a dozen chapters that have shared their job descriptions with us. So just grabbing those, taking them, making them your own, adding a few things, taking out a few things, and then you're done, hopefully. And it can always evolve. It doesn't have to be perfect the first go-round, but it'll give you something to start with. And then, so you take that membership chair role responsibility as hopefully you'll just find one that works for you. But then you take that and then you break it down maybe into 3 pieces instead of just 1. So your membership chair who is Brooke, you know, she can look at that as well and say, okay, maybe I can break this down to these 3 pieces. And then when you're looking to recruit, you say, hey, you know, can you handle A, B, and C, or can you handle this piece? And hopefully that will be more enticing to that volunteer. And it may take, you know, we'll say 3 hours a month of your time. Is that make sense to you? So again, I can help you with those as well. If you're not, so again, go into the library, take a look at some things. There's recruitment postcards in there. There's sample prospect letters in there. There's all kinds of things. And also check out the listserv in that community, because there's been lots of conversations by chapter leaders on volunteer recruitment, on special non-member events, campaigns. And so you can just breeze through there and check out some of the conversations that have been held. And if you as members, as chapter leaders, have questions that you want to put out there to that community, you know, I was thinking about doing this. Does anybody have any advice? This is your, you know, peers. These are your peers that are doing the same thing you're doing. And Brooke, you should be a member. There's another community as well called the Membership Chairs Community. You're automatically a part of that. If you want to talk to me afterwards or give me, you know, an email if you haven't been in there, again, there's more specific things in that membership chairs community that are just specific to being membership chair, what that means, your role, making sure you have the section of the chapter manual, understanding the member types, and then also there's all kinds of samples and models in there for you to draw from. Okay, I went off on a tangent, so I'm going to try to get back to the presentation. Okay, again, what doesn't work? Lack of recognition. And what does work? Recognizing your volunteers, praising them, rewarding them, and celebrating them in front of the group. I mean, that's, again, a big thing, especially for a volunteer to be able to go back, hey, today, you know, in front of the luncheon, they recognized our firm and me, and, you know, making sure that you always say that the volunteer's firm and what they do. Is very important, even if it's just by sending a thank you letter at the end of the year to their principal, making sure you get that information. Thank you, you know, Jason was an amazing leader and volunteer. He did A, B, C, and D, and we value him. And, you know, and make sure Jason's okay with that, obviously. You want to make sure that they feel comfortable letting you do that. I would always get permission, but certainly those types of recognition are very helpful, and also for them being able to continue on and be a volunteer. And, you know, just getting up in front of the next breakfast and recognizing, you know, one volunteer before each event, you know, highlight that person, what they've done for you, and doesn't always have to be a pitch to get volunteers. Just recognizing them and seeing people in the audience will say, hey, you know, maybe that's something I can do. I'd like to be a part of that team. And having fun when you do it, you know, having fun, and that always entices people to want to join. If it's a good group and they see that the volunteers and the committees are close and they do fun things together, and there are maybe some special just appreciation lunches just for your volunteers, something separate, and, you know, it's made known so that other volunteers kind of get enticed with that. They see they can't go to it, but they see what's going on. Okay, to recap real quickly, again, don't just blanket ask each person directly, coming up with a call list, pairing up your board members with a few members you're not familiar with, get to know those members, making a few phone calls a month, be clear on specifics of the position, again, making sure your roles, your job descriptions are up to date, and you can piece those out into smaller pieces. Volunteers are more willing to say yes to short-term, again, than with no end date in sight. And I know that, you know, a lot of chapters, a lot of volunteers, that's kind of where they're at. They know that they're the director. They have no clue how long they're going to be in that position, and they're afraid it's going to go on for years. And they may be happy and okay with that, but it's helpful for everybody to keep that, to feel at peace, to feel, you know, excited, and to continue to feel energized about what they're doing, is to know that they're not stuck in the role, that they want to be in that role, and that hopefully there will be help. And I know it's hard and it's going to take time. This is not something you're going to snap your fingers and have 10 people standing and knocking ready to volunteer. But it will, you know, maybe over the next 3-6 months, if everybody on the board is willing to really jump in and start having those conversations, having those coffees, making the phone calls, finding out, you know, who's interested in what, doing an interest survey, Those types of things will really help. So here's some quick tips. And again, you don't have to write all these down. I will send you guys this PowerPoint presentation. And again, we recorded it as well. Volunteer coordinator position. This is something that some of the chapters have done. There's someone on the board. Maybe it's a past president. Maybe it's somebody that you can go back to that's no longer involved, that you just, and again, it doesn't have to be a voting position on the board, but you want to just recruit this person specifically to when they're at events to get to know. They're doing basically what you're doing, but that's all they're responsible for, is just to get to know the membership, have conversations, shake hands, invite new members to come to maybe one of your next planning or committee meetings, invite some of those interested people to come to one of your committee meetings. They don't, hopefully it'll be a fun meeting. You can tie in business as well as making it fun. They see what it's all about. So having that specific person, again, a lot of the chapters have gone back to a past president, or maybe it's a fellow in your chapter, or maybe it's a CPSM, someone that feels passionate about SMPS, that maybe they just can't be on the board of directors, but this would be a great role for them to fill. And all they're doing is supplying you with names and information. Hey, I spoke to Heather today, and she's and she's with this company, and she might be willing to do a couple hours a month if you can find some way to place her. And even if it's just, asking them to come work a registration table for one event, they sit there with you, they get to know the members as they're checking in, they see what firms are there, and then they, hopefully whoever they're sitting next to is able to just start, bonding a relationship with them, and maybe the next time you need help, they'll be there for you. But it doesn't have to be that they're automatically taking on a role. Whoops. I didn't mean to get away from that. Team lunch meetings, again, I know some of the chapters what they'll do is the membership chair and maybe the president will invite 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 people to go to a lunch meeting or just coffee. And they we just want to have a conversation with you as a member, hear from you, and then when you're sitting there, part of that is not a hard push for recruitment, but if you're interested, this is what it has done for me. And I think telling a story, hopefully your story is a good one, and you have gotten rewards, and you feel that you've grown because you've been a volunteer. Sharing your stories, even having someone get up before breakfast and share a story or before your next program, whatever that is. You give, before you announce the speaker, give a member a chance or a volunteer a chance to get up and say, hey, I am the treasurer, I do this with the chapter, and this is what SMPS Central PA has done for me and in my career, and hopefully it's help you to grow as a person, a leader, professionally and personally. So I think just sharing those little stories instead of just a blanketed recruitment sometimes does a lot more for people. They connect with that a little bit better. Succession plans, making sure each one of your board members is obviously at this point thinking possibly who could fill that role, and again, that's where that, each board position is looking and constantly trying to recruit someone. It's not just all on one person. It's not all on the president or the president-elect. That each person is really trying to find out who that is that can take over for them and do a good job. Volunteer interest survey. This, again, is a great tool. We already have it. We've created it for chapters. It's sitting. You guys have access to, if you're not aware, SurveyMonkey. We have an account with them nationally, and I can send you via email, but I'll tell you really quick. The username is lisa@smps.org, and the password is SMPS22314. That's our account information. Again, if you don't write it down today, I can send it to you. Go into the SurveyMonkey, and you will see tons of chapters have use it, and we've acquired lots and lots of surveys that chapters have done, from program evaluations to membership surveys to all kinds of different things. And I can specifically send this to you. The volunteer interest survey I created a couple years ago for another chapter. All you have to do is slap your name on it, add a few different, if you want to change it up a little bit, but send it out to your membership. And hopefully you'll get, even if you only get 10 people to respond, those 10 people may say, I can do a couple hours a month, and I like writing, or I like taking pictures, or I like, just being behind the scenes, or maybe I want to challenge myself and get up and introduce a speaker for you. So that's a good thing to do, the volunteer interest survey. Specific job descriptions, we've talked about that, my SMPS and the samples. Having a resource listing, small task, again, breaking it down. Maybe in the back of the room you have clipboards at every meeting, but it's specific tasks. Can you do this? It'll take 2 hours each month. Please sign up. It's not a commitment. Just sign up so we can have a conversation with you. Doesn't mean that you're signing up and you're signing your life away. Just sign, and also a temp list. Some chapters have called it a temp agency, like a temp list. Send out a part of maybe your volunteer interest survey. One of the questions is, would you be okay if you're added to a temp list, so that if we're in an emergency need or we need someone, for last minute to do a task, could we call on you to do that task? And again, you'd be surprised how many people say, sure, you can put my name down. And again, they can say no, they're not committed, but it's being able to just connect to that one person and say, they come in, okay, I'll do it. I know you really need help. I'll come work the registration table. But hopefully you have some fun conversations with that person. They feel connection, and maybe they're willing to do it again next time. So just some different and fun ways to connect to your membership. The buddy system, again, is assigning a board member, each board member having 1 or 2 members to get to know. Just talked about the temp list. And again, recognize new members and volunteers. We briefly touched on that. At your events, making sure you find a way, whether it's on your website, post your new members that have joined. Highlight a volunteer on your site. If you have a newsletter electronically or print, highlight those volunteers, highlight your new members. And we know statistically that the highest number of drops across the board for the national organization is the 1 to 2 year member. So those 1 to 2 year members are the most volatile, and really trying to engage them as soon as you can. And again, if it's a small task, those chapters that have, I know Columbus is a medium to large chapter, even some of the smaller chapters, Fort Worth, I'm just thinking off a few, San Antonio, Austin, some of those smaller chapters, Orange County, have 60 members, 50 members, or maybe a little bit more. Some of their volunteer base is nearly 50% of their membership. And again, it's because, and it's always changing, and that may go up and down slightly, but they always have broken it down into smaller pieces, and nearly 50% of their membership are volunteering in some way. And a new member campaign checklist. This is something we did nationally. We're bringing back in the next couple of months, where we challenge the new members. As soon as they join, they get this in their welcome packet, and it says there's a lot more information than just what you see here, but that is the checklist card. And a lot of chapters have adopted this and made it their own. So when a new member joins, they'll see that appear on their roster. They send them out, maybe it's an email or a different mailing, and it says, as a new member, if you, within the next 6 months or within the next 12 months, if you can achieve each one of these things, and you have a checkbox, and that might be attend a networking event, attend one of our workshops, volunteer 10 hours of your time within the 12 months. Whatever that may be, get to know a non-member. And then as they check off each one of those items, and then they have somebody on your board will have to sign off on it. And if they do it within a year, maybe they get a $50 gift card. If you, in your reserves, I was looking at your reserves, and that might have changed since August. But, I know that you have a good foundation. You don't always want to dip into your reserves. You definitely want to keep a certain amount in your reserves in case anything should happen with your chapter. But you guys do have, it is available for you if you want to recycle some of that money into your chapter through a membership campaign or a campaign like this. Maybe you allot 500 of that reserve to go towards a campaign or something during a given period of time. These 12 new members, if they achieve volunteering and doing this, they get a reward. And it may not be a $50 gift card. It might just be they get to come to 1 or 2 events at no charge because they were able to complete this challenge. So get creative. I mean, certainly if you have any questions about whether or not you're allowed to do it or how to use your reserves, if you want to start thinking about that, we can have a separate conversation about that, and Tina would certainly be a part of that conversation. But it's just something to think about. So we're getting towards the end. Do you guys have any questions at all at this point, any specific things that you want to talk about, or some of these resources that I mentioned?
I know just one question I had kind of in regards to the temp list, and just what other chapters find to be successful is that, we understand, obviously, there's always going to be competing priorities for our volunteers, and
sure.
Sometimes people have last-minute things come up, and it seems like the way we've been rolling, like there's no real accountability for that person to, it's just like a last-minute, like I'm out, and like there's no effort for them to find a replacement for the for whatever they needed to accomplish. And I'm just wondering, like in terms of other chapters, like how do other people handle that? I mean, are there any rules in place in terms of like that's fine if you can't make it, but we really like you to be one
to help find a replacement? And that is a best practice for many of the chapters. I mean, obviously, if it's very last minute and they just can't, they have an emergency, and we understand that. Hopefully, it doesn't happen that often. But certainly, a lot of the chapters do have a process in place where if someone knows they are going to have a conflict for a specific event they're supposed to be at and announce a speaker, if they're supposed to be putting, whatever that job may be, that they find somebody else on a committee or someone else on the board to help them out with that. And it's not always on one person to manage that. I mean, having, again, that temp list is something where the members have, you've reached out to the members, you've asked them, if willing, would you be willing? And again, this is not a commitment to volunteer. You can say yes or no, make it clear to them, but would you be willing to step in if we needed you? And depending on the task, I mean, there may be a large task that just a quick volunteer can't know or jump right into. But a lot of times it may just be coming up and getting them some exposure. And who knows, you might have somebody come in and be able to be a room monitor, set up the AV or whatever it is that takes place, and having them agree to be on that call list. And like I said, even if you get 15 out of the the 40 some or 35 that are not volunteers, is going to be helpful. And so then it makes it easier, a little bit easier for that person on your board who needed to had that emergency to try to find a replacement. At first, you probably would go straight to your board members, but after that, being able to call on a volunteer to help out is helpful. And that is one thing. You could reach out to Columbus. I could put you in contact with them. I know I'm just rattling off chapters, but if there's a specific thing that you're interested in and learning more on and how exactly the logistics of it works, I mean, it's one thing for me to put out an idea, but handling it logistically can be like, how do we do that? So I can put you in contact with the chapters that I know that have done it and done it well, and then you can go from there.
Okay, that's great. Actually, next month, Mike Tosh from the SMPS Columbus chapter is going to lead our kind of strategic planning effort. And he and I have talked, just in general about some of the things that they have in place, and I think he'll help us to come up with a good plan for moving forward. So.
And again, it's a great question to post in the chapter leaders library, or maybe just in the membership chair community, not library, but community. I'm not saying you'll get a whole flood of responses depending on the question. And also the PLS, Amy, I'm sure your community in particular has been very active. So even if you're finding you're not getting a response from the chapter leaders community, ask Amy, could you post this question? I just want to know, does anybody do a temp list, and how does it work, or how do they recruit last-minute volunteers? And the more active communities like the P3 community and the new up-and-coming president-elect community, Heather, your community hopefully will start, getting more active once you come back from PLS. Those are, again, they're quick responses. You can get, even if you get one or two helpful suggestions, and again, calling on us, we can help you. If you can't find the answer you're looking for, I will try to do it for you. So just please stay connected with me, and that's everybody on your board, not just Amy and Heather, Brooke and any of you, Scott, Jason, reach out to me, and I'm always here. So mary@smps.org, call the national office and ask for me, and if you need a specific resource, you're looking for something, I can help you.
Do a lot of chapters have committee structures?
They do. Even small chapters, they most do. They have the executive, like I said, you've got your, and I can send you also, which might be helpful when you're talking about policy, especially regarding filling a vacant position or having a last-minute help. Several chapters, Alabama is one I just recently worked on, and they're a smaller, I think they're 47 members actually. They just created a policies and procedures manual. And I think it's like when I say manual, it gets scary. You're thinking, oh, God, who's going to put that together? But I already have it in place. Alabama has put one together. And it's, again, you can look at it and say, do these apply to me? No, yes. Do they apply to our chapter? But it's a great way to identify certain best practices that you want to keep in place, certain things. And then, again, it can change. It's not your bylaws. Your bylaws, you don't want to change. There may be something in your bylaws that you say this really hinders our progress and us being successful, and maybe that's something we can have a discussion with the president on. If that's something you feel in your bylaws is holding you back, we can certainly address that. But having the policies and procedures manual is something that can be changed from time to time, but at least it's in writing. You have some policies in place. The job descriptions are in there. And again, I can send you 2 or 3 samples of this, and you can just filter out what you don't like, add a few things, and then make it your own. But that's really helpful to having some policies in place, especially with volunteer changeover and also how long a person's in place, that type of thing. So that might be helpful, and I can send those to you as well.
Great, thank you.
Did you guys have any other questions?
No.
Well, I really appreciate it, again, everybody, you allowing me to do this. And again, if you feel like even in your own board that the board that you have in place now, that there's frustration, and again, it happens. You guys are doing so much work on top of what you do with your firms, making sure that your principals are supportive of SMPS, and that this is not, we don't want this to be something that is a hindrance. And I know that it can be, because I'm a volunteer too, and sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I just don't have time to get this done, and it just frustrates me. But if that's how and that's from time to time, everybody feels frustration. But if it's something that you feel all the time, certainly that's not going to help the association. That's not going to help the volunteer base grow. And I can promise you, if the chapter, if the board is frustrated and there's a big disconnect between board members and there's not a lot of camaraderie going on, the membership will see that and they'll feel it, even if it's conversations being had or frustrations being aired to other members. So it's really, you guys coming together, agreeing on what your process is going to be. And Mike, having him come is a great step. He's a wonderful person to help with strategic planning. And we're, just so you know, we're about to roll out a strategic planning toolkit at PLS. Heather, you'll get see all the details on this. That strategic planning toolkit is basically, it's a Bible of how to handle strategic planning, and that doesn't, again, have to be so cumbersome. It can be a 2-pager action plan. You have this action plan. You come into your board meetings. Each person has something they're assigned to in a time frame, and you're holding them accountable at each one of your board meetings. That action plan is sitting in front of you, and it could be as simple as each board member having conversations and recruiting 1 volunteer, working on that throughout the year. It doesn't have to be in 30 days recruit 5 volunteers. I mean, it may be possible if everybody really works together and feels comfortable and having fun. Some chapters are, we're doing a strategic planning session in June with Philadelphia, and she's having it at her house. And she said, I want it to be more personal. She's able to do that. But, Tina and I'm going to go there to facilitate. And so it's one of those things that, bringing people together on the side, too, and just making sure that you guys are doing things together to have fun, and it's not always business. And I'm sure you guys are doing that, too. So working together is successful and making sure that you feel good about it. So hopefully things will turn around and you'll be able to start recruiting some volunteers. And again, this is not just a webinar and then I'm done. You know, I'm here for you. Call on us if you just need advice. If you want, again, a volunteer is not sure, maybe you want someone else to reach out to them. I'm happy not to push, but just to call and explain what some of the benefits are and how it has helped so many of our members in their career and personally. So thank you again, you all, for all the work that you do and for your dedication, SMPS. We truly appreciate it, and we want to help you as best we can because we know it's a lot of work. So thank you all for allowing me to speak today, and you have a wonderful day.
Well, thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
You're welcome. Take care, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.